near future. I will be, but they did not purchase the flight. If you want to donate personally to Dr. Umar, you can donate on Zelle by using my cell number, 215-989-9858. If you want to donate personally to Dr. Umar, not the school, but personally, you can use my cell number on Zelle, 215-989-9858, or you can hit the Cash App, $ Dr. Umar Johnson, or you can hit the Cash App, $ Dr. Umar Johnson, or you can hit the PayPal, paypal.me/Umar the psychologist. But of course, the priority is FDMG. Cash App, $ FDMG School, paypal.me/FDMG Academy. So, before we get into the 70s, I want to start by bringing you from the 1960s. Before we get into the 70s, it's only right that I start you with the 1960s, okay? Okay? So on February the 9th of 1965, the good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. met with President Lyndon Baines Johnson in the White House. On February the 21st, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz Malcolm X, the greatest since Garvey, was assassinated. A collaboration between jealous Negroes in the organization and the United States power structure. Now, on March the 7th of 1965, we have the first march from Selma to Montgomery that was stopped by the police. So Malcolm is murdered on February the 21st of 1965. And then the very next month, on March the 7th, we have the very first Selma to Montgomery march as part of the civil rights movement. Okay? And then on March the 8th, I want y'all to pay attention to this. We're in the late 60s right now. We're in the late 60s right now. On March the 8th, 3 weeks after they murdered Malcolm, 3 weeks after the FBI murdered Malcolm, Lyndon Baines Johnson passes the Law Enforcement Assistance Act. I want y'all to understand, overstand, and understand this. March the 8th of 1965, Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Law Enforcement Assistance Act. Okay? This act would give the federal government a direct role in local police departments for the first time in American history. I'm going to say it again. March the 8th of 1965, 3 weeks after they murdered Malcolm, Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Law Enforcement Assistance Act, which gave the federal government a direct role in local police operations in the black community throughout the entire country. Okay? Now, the Law Enforcement Assistance Agency created the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration, which would be housed in the Department of Justice and would become the fastest growing federal agency in the government. The budget for the Law Enforcement Assistance Agency went from $10 million in 1970 to $850 million by 1985. I want y'all to pay attention to this. I want y'all to pay attention to this. I want y'all to pay attention to this. Hang on one second, Facebook. All right. So, the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration would be the branch of the government that would be used to infiltrate all black nationalist organizations after Malcolm's assassination. And the government would swell their budget from $10 million in 1970 to $850 million by 1985. The purpose of the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration was to prevent the rise of a black Messiah after Malcolm. What they did was they gave the police in the black community military-grade surveillance equipment and military-grade weapons equipment. I want y'all to understand this. The federal government, right after they murdered Malcolm, they empowered the local police department in every black community with military-grade surveillance equipment and military-grade assault weapons. I need y'all to understand this. I need y'all to understand this. I need y'all to understand this. Part of the reason they did this right after they murdered Malcolm, is because they feared a strong urban revolt by American Africans as an act of revenge for the assassination of Malcolm X. So right after they killed Malcolm X, they immediately started giving money to the police departments so that they could suppress any attempt by black youth to avenge Malcolm's death by attacking the power structure or its institutions, brothers and sisters. Okay? The Law Enforcement Assistance Administration sponsored over 80,000 crime control projects. It sponsored over 80,000 crime control projects, and the goal was to expand supervision and control of the black community. So this is COINTELPRO on a whole new level. This is COINTELPRO on a whole new level. Then, on June the 7th, 1965, the United States Supreme Court makes abortion fully legal. On June 7th, 1965, the United States Supreme Court made abortions fully legal across the country. Why did the Supreme Court in the summer of 65? Why did the Supreme Court in the summer of 65 cancel all arguments against abortion? Because you just had the Civil Rights Bill of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65. Black people appeared as if they were going to be included into the American social structure. And to prepare for that, they had to make sure they could give black women as many abortions as possible. They had to make sure that Planned Parenthood could continue to operate in the black community. So the Supreme Court outlawed abortion in 65, okay? Right after they murdered Malcolm, a few months later. Then in August 8th of 65, August the 8th of 1965, the Voting Rights Act would be signed into law by President Lyndon Baines Johnson. But what black people failed to understand, was even though you got the right to vote on August the 8th of 1965, on March the 8th, April, May, June, July, 5 months before the Voting Rights Act, Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Law Enforcement Assistance Act. 5 months before the Voting Rights Act, Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Law Enforcement Assistance Act. So while black people were celebrating the right to vote unencumbered, your government was empowering your police to destroy the black community. While you were being given the right to vote, the police were being empowered to undermine your ability to resist governmental oppression.